Okay, we're going to try again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm just... Okay, can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes.
Right. Okay, that's good. So what we're going to do this morning is we'll look at a few more of the PowerPoint presentation slides in terms of the enterprise risk management strategy approach, and I'll give you another website print, which is a good website for any further reading that you might wish to do. But I'm sure Miguel's told you already that any exam that you do will be based on the folders that you've got. So it's not necessary to do extra reading, but I know some people, like to read extra as it appertains to their particular job. So I've just got the screen share thing going and get the slides on. Let's try that. Right, I'm hoping the share screen's coming up.
Yeah, this is.
Excellent. So if you look in your slide information pack, the enterprise-wide slides, and it's number 26 in my pack, but it might not be quite exactly the same number as you, but we come up with this enterprise risk management definition. So it's probably about, about a third of the way through. I'll just give you a moment or two to make sure you can find it. If not, see Miguel's right at the front there. I'm sure he can help you. Thank you.
It should be between pages 6 and 8.
Excellent.
Page 1? 13? Sorry.
Everyone located it? If you found it and your neighbour hasn't, help them to find it.
Yeah, this page 13. We're good.
Thanks, Miguel. Okay, well, remember when we first introduced the program, we talked about the concept of enterprise-wide risk management, trying to look at this galaxy of risks, and we looked at the difficulties in trying to pinpoint the different types of risks that you face, in different geographical regions rather, and then also we talked how important it was about the fact that the tone had to be set from the top. It needs to be set by the board of directors. Now this is a secondary reference point, and can you see at the bottom of that slide it says source COSO, C-O-S-O?
Yes.
Now this is a very interesting website that you could have a look at, so it's www.coso.org, and you'll find this is a US-based organization that have been active for many years in the area of risk management. And what we're going to look at in a moment or two is a couple of extracts from their website that I think very, very relevant, and useful for when you're looking at the topic of enterprise-wide risk management. And the first thing on their website is they made definition as long ago as 2004, which was coincidental with the first of the Basel II publications, which came out in July 2004, encouraging firms, just as we've seen, to adopt an enterprise risk management approach. So this is the COSO definition of enterprise risk management, a process affected by an entity's board of directors, management and other personnel. So I'd encourage you to highlight that opening sentence or underline it, because once again, I can't predict what questions you're going to get, but I would have thought on the basis that it's an international risk management program that you're almost bound to get a question, on what is enterprise risk management. So it's applied in strategy setting and across the enterprise. That's very important, again, across the enterprise. As we'll see in a moment or two, it needs to encompass the different divisions, departments, etc. And this is designed to identify potential events that may affect the entity, so that's the business, and manage risks to be within its risk appetite. Again, very, very important, managing risks within its risk appetite. And we've talked about this before, that, whatever you're coming up with, you've got to maintain a good focus. I'm not talking about the exam now, I'm talking about your job. In risk management, we need to keep a good focus to match what we're doing relevant to the organization. I've said this before, we don't want to come up with incredibly complicated schemes that don't match the organization's risk. On the other hand, if your organization is very internationally focused, then the risk frameworks are going to need to be more detailed. So manage risks within its risk appetite. We discussed this as well. Some firms are quite conservative and some are quite aggressive in their approach, and to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of entity objectives. So I know that's quite a long-winded definition, but it does cover a lot of the things that we need to think of and consider when we're thinking of enterprise risk management. So if we look at the next one. So why is enterprise risk management important? Well, the reason it's important is, when you think about it, every firm or every entity, whether you're working for profit or not, and of course there are some non-profit organizations, they all exist to realize value for its stakeholders. And stakeholders, the wider definition, going beyond just shareholders. If you're working within an organization, you can be classed as a stakeholder within the organization. If there are suppliers to your organization, again, they could be categorized as stakeholders. So under this enterprise risk management approach, they tend to take a bigger approach than just the shareholders and shareholder value. So value is created, preserved, or eroded by management decisions in all activities, from setting strategy to operating the enterprise day to day. And some people will tell you that reputation, for example, reputational risk, could take 25, 30 years or even more to build up the reputation of the organization, but it can be shredded. As you know, disaster can occur, within a few minutes or a few hours, depending on activities. And we looked at the Barings Bank case, and that's a classic example. Barings Bank been around for almost 300 years, and it was made bankrupt, by Nick Leeson's activities there. So these actions, in terms of risk, are very, very important indeed. Another example of that, in the UK, this time moving away from the finance industry, but there was a very, very large organisation of jeweller stores, retail stores in the UK called Ratners, Ratners. Some of you might remember the name. A huge business with a massive turnover and a large number of jewellery retail outlets in the UK. And then Gerald Ratner, who was the son of the founder, was asked to speak at the Institute of Directors annual dinner. So, a very important event. And I mentioned the IOD website to you. So this is the same people, Institute of Directors in the UK. They have over 70,000 members. And this annual conference is a very big event. And Gerald Ratner stood up, and Miguel gets quite cross with me sometimes telling too many funny stories. But Gerald Ratner stood up at this conference, and he made what was intended, I'm sure, to be a joke. And he said, in our retail stores, we get lots of customers because we sell very low quality crap, CRP. So, and of course the audience reacted totally, the wrong way for his expectation. And then you might imagine, on the newspapers in the UK the next day, kind of banner headlines, Gerald Ratner calls his inventory, his stock, a load of crap, etc., etc. Anyway, cut long story short, they were listed on the stock market and the share price collapsed totally, even to the extent that Gerald Ratner had to be removed from his job, even although, he's son of the founder, and an outside person was brought straight in. So there's another example, of how quickly these things can happen when you're not intending them to. And then here we're just talking a lot about value being created by management decisions, etc., etc. And then for companies, in the second paragraph, shareholders realize value when they recognize value creation, and they benefit from share value growth. And we're not going to go into government entities, but if we're thinking of shareholders, if you buy a share in a company listed on the stock market, you're buying it for two reasons. One, you're trying to buy some cash flow coming in by way of a dividend payment. But of course, the other thing that you want to realize over time is capital growth. So this is the added shareholder value. So enterprise risk management should help facilitate management's ability to deal effectively with potential events that create uncertainty. And a good example of this, if you just wanted to make a note on that slide, would be business continuity planning. And this has come to the forefront much more recently of enterprise-wide risk management planning, because we've seen a number of events, and then last year, the hurricane season in the Caribbean last year was absolutely terrible. One of the banks we deal with quite significantly is the National Bank of the British Virgin Islands, and I was speaking just yesterday with the chief executive there, and she's only returned to work after 8 months, because you might remember from seeing the television, Tortola in the British Virgin Islands was like totally flattened by the first hurricane, and then the second one coming through, took out whatever little was remaining. So her bank has just become operational again after 8 months. I mean, what a time to have to restore these things. So business continuity planning coming forward is an example of this. We've got to have, backup sites, particularly with the technology and the records that we have today. And just by way of a quick diversion, how many people in the room, this organisation, has a backup plan for business continuity management? How many people have got a contingency plan? So there's a few, but there's quite a few persons that don't have their hand up, yeah? Well, I would suggest to you, it's something you need to put on your agenda for discussion, because it's very, very important. If disaster strikes, and we never want it to, but if it does, we've got to have a plan for coping with it. I had a personal experience of this many years ago in the area of Bishopsgate in London, quite near to the Bank of England, and some of you may have seen pictures of the devastation in Bishopsgate when we were struck by a bomb that went off, to the extent that there were huge holes in the road, buildings collapsed. It was a dreadful thing. In the organisation I was working with, we were quite close to the Bishopsgate area, and because of the fierceness of the bomb blast generating massive heat in our building, the heat generated the water sprinklers into activity. And guess where our business continuity plan was? It was paper-based, on someone's desk. And of course, when we were trying to find out what the hell should we do, who's supposed to phone the ambulances or the fire brigade, how do we evacuate the building, etc., the plan was destroyed. So that's an example of poor contingency planning. So it should provide mechanisms that we can respond in a manner quite quickly, and enhance the ability to communicate, and we can deliver, hoping we're not going to get too many surprises going on. So in conclusion of that section, ERM will support value creation by helping management deal effectively with potential events and respond in a manner that reduces the likelihood of downside outcomes. And within your business continuity plan, there should be a target, for trying to restore the business as quickly as possible to an operational situation. Let me just try and move this down. Okay, now we're starting to move into a section again that's on the COSO website, and we're going to look at this diagrammatically in a moment. And we're going to use this approach when we look at the two case studies this morning. So we're going to try and bring, what we've been talking about to life by looking at two case studies. One I asked you to read, because we haven't met for 2 weeks. I hope you've had a chance to read it. If not, we'll have a few minutes just to quickly zip through it. But the idea is to split the entity into 4 different categories. So the strategic objectives, what are the operational objectives and activities, what sort of reporting systems do we have in place, and there's compliance coming in once again, featuring there. Now this next diagram is a straight lift from the COSO website, so that's why we referenced it earlier on, and this is their cube which features on their website. So there's lots and lots of reading on the website, but one of the key things is this cube. Now I don't know how big a slide Miguel's given you on this, so I'm not too sure if you can read it all. Can you read the sectors on it or not?
No, not really.
Not really? Okay, well I'm sure he'll provide an enlargement for you, so you make a note to make enlargement of that slide, Miguel?
Yeah, well.
Thanks. But there's three basic sides to it. So the first part of the cube facing you talks about the internal environment in which you're working, and then it looks at what objectives are being set by your particular firm. The next section is identifying potential risk events that we've talked about, and then can you make an assessment of those risks? In other words, are they low impact, medium impact, or high impact? Some people come up with different coloured heat maps in Excel you could use on this, or you can simply use a normal Word document where you're going to categorise them. And then the next section on the front part there,
I think we lost him for a second. Just reconnect.
yeah, that's a shame we went down.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we were doing pretty good today. So I was talking you through that first part. Let me try and share the screen again.
Well, we still have it up.
Oh, it's sharing now, is it?
Yeah, it is. It's still
Great.
up.
Okay, control activities I got to, and now that important area that I was discussing, you know, what information methodology are we using, how do we communicate with each other if there's an unfortunate catastrophic risk event, and then, you know, how are we monitoring these? Now at this point now I need to digress just slightly for a second. Again, I need to ask you a question. How many people in the room, in their organisation, actually have a risk register? How many people have a risk register or a risk log? Yeah, again, not so many. So again, you're going to need to make a note of this, you know, particularly as your program develops. And I think, is it Sam that's going to be talking, Miguel, about operational risk?
Yeah, he has operational risk and
yeah. So when you're looking at operational risk, that's the point at which you need to incorporate a risk register or a risk log of events. So very important document there because it helps you monitor. Now the top of the cube, again you probably can't read it, but that talks about the strategic risks, the operational risk, the reporting and compliance, which we discussed just a few minutes ago. And then on the side panel there, again you're not going to be able to read this very well, it talks about looking at risks to begin with at enterprise level. And then if you're quite a large organization, looking at risks at divisional level, and then moving further down, subsidiaries, you might have some subsidiary organizations reporting to you, and then looking also at the business units. So really taking a very wide view of the risks that we're potentially encountering. Okay, now that's just showing the front again in a little bit more detail. Now here's another framework to assist you. This time it's from the Institute of Internal Auditors, and it's their take on how you would look at risk analysis in any type of organization. So you'll see some familiar words in there like we've been discussing: risk assessment, identification, measurement, prioritization. Risk management: can we control it? Can we share or transfer it? Can we diversify or avoid it? And then risk monitoring: processes, activities, and entities. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop at that point and we'll start to have a look at the Bank A case study. So let me just try and find that. So I'll show you the brief from the screen to begin with, and then we'll start to talk about the actual case. Now, I was hoping Miguel would have had a chance to try and move you into groups, but it doesn't look as if you can, so one or two of you might need to turn around for discussion with people behind you. But this is an important case within the enterprise-wide risk management program. It's quite a difficult case, but it gives us a chance, right at the beginning, in Module 1, to think on a wider basis. Because as we discussed before, in the situation of two organizations coming together, whether it's a merger or an acquisition, and if it's an acquisition, is it a friendly one or is it a hostile one? Whatever the circumstances are, you can imagine in two organizations coming together, there would be a number of additional risks that there might not have been existing so much as before. So the bank takeover case, we ask you to review the documents and summarize the main risks. What are the main components of the risk management priority? And these key points are already highlighted for you under best vision, best benefits, lowest risk. So it's worth highlighting that bit: best vision, best benefits, lowest risk. Then point number 2, what are the main components of the rationale for the offer? So this is Bank A making an offer for Bank B, and you can find that on page 4. And we're going to ask you, do you support these views that are stated on page 4? And then what's your view? But you can't really give your view until you've done, 1 and 2. So 3 would be summarize your view on what you think. Do you think Bank A should acquire Bank B, or should they follow the BOSS alternative, which is the alternative bid? As I said to you before, this often happens, particularly in a hostile acquisition, where the bid will be made, and then quite often another organization will think, oh, there must be something interesting going on here, and they make a counter bid. The counter bid is by BOSS. Or do you support continuation of Bank B as standalone? So we've got 3 different options there. We've got A acquiring B, we've got BOSS acquiring B, and we've got Bank B continuing on its own. So I'm just getting the case study on the screen there. Here we are. Okay, so have you all had a chance to look at these documents or not?
Yeah.
No? Some people have? How many people have had a chance to look? Not very many, okay. Okay, well what I'll do then is I'll give you a few minutes, say 10 minutes, to read through particularly the first part of the document. So let me get to the important part, and then start to get you.
You have one? No way. Everybody else have a Bank AB?
Okay, well, what I need you to do then is I'll give you, say 15 minutes, look, to read through up to, let me just find the most important pages for you, to read through, to and including page 10, yeah? Okay, so let's just make sure we're on the same one. So page 10, finished there, look on growth. You see that? Miguel, can you help on that, Miguel? Make sure everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody okay on that? Yeah. Up to page 10. Great. Yeah, you need some light to be able to read this.
Yeah, you want a little more light?
That's better. You can't work in the dark on a complicated case of this. Okay, I'm going to mute my microphone then for say 10, 15 minutes to give you a chance to read those 10 pages. So while you're reading them, take your pencil, your pen or your highlighter and think as risk managers and try and highlight key points as you're going through, bearing in mind this is what Bank A are trying to acquire Bank B. So it's Bank A trying to acquire Bank B. So try and think as risk managers as you read through.
One second, God, ready. You know what Cedric is going to buy? No? Yeah?
Okay, hello again. So we got through the first 10 pages?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, well, let's make a start then by looking at page 4. So normally we would do this as a group exercise, but you're not really suited too well for that. So anyone want to start us off on things they spotted from page 4? You'll have to speak up, don't go on, Miguel's got the mic today. Any comments on page 4?
So on page 4, you have Bank A, who is making a proposal to buy out Bank B to make it
Yes.
Bank AB.
Yes, correct.
And what they have done is they have highlighted or presented what would be the main benefits in terms of for them doing that. And some of the
Yes.
things they highlighted would have been the fact that they already have a combination. They're saying that a combination of Bank E will create a bank with strong position in the UK
Yes.
international presence. Okay. And
Mhm.
that I think one of the important things they talked about here is for the potential for future growth. Okay.
Yes.
They talked about cost savings and
Mhm.
revenue benefits. Okay.
Yes, second bullet point, yeah. Enlarged bank will, we believe, create substantial value for shareholders through a combination of cost savings and revenue benefits. And often, if you read or what's the news about mergers, acquisitions. People talk about synergies, yes, synergies between the two, and quite often you'll see synergies are presented to the shareholders by way of cost savings, so that one's worth underlining. And then generally, the other main synergy that's quoted is revenues, yes, so revenues increasing. So yes, two very good points there.
Correct. I guess one of the other things they mentioned here is they went into the fact that Bank B by itself, in terms of the growth that they've experienced year over year, is being very
So-
minimal.
Yeah,
Okay, and the fact that Bank B by itself, a standalone bank, is not able to, will not be able to achieve cost reduction and
Yes.
improve market position. Okay,
Yes.
they talked about the
Yep.
ways.
yeah, that's a very important point, because if you look at the top of the page, you can see this is addressed to Bank B shareholders, yes?
Correct.
Yeah, so going back in history, this potential acquisition, why we like to use this case is because we've got quite a lot of information, and secondly, it was actually the largest financial institution potential acquisition bid document in the history of the UK at the time. So it's an interesting one. So if you imagine you're a Bank B shareholder, and remember we talked before about if you own a share, even if you only own one share, you're looking for two things. You're looking for a dividend payment, which will be cash flow coming in for you, and then you're looking for, the capital growth, the increase in shareholder value. So you've hit on a very important point there, because Bank B at the moment they're not delivering significant dividends because they're not performing too well, and also they're not showing growth, and the potential for growth is quite difficult. Yep, some very good points coming out. Anyone want to add to what that lady was saying? Some other points?
The market is limited to the UK. I was just saying that market is limited to the UK.
Whose market?
Bank B's.
Yes, so they're saying that Bank AB will have a stronger international presence. That's quite correct, yes?
They're also talking about Bank A, also talking about, took the opportunity to analyze or talk about the other proposals that were being presented by Bank B and by
Yes.
by BOS. And they're
Yeah.
talking about the fact that, okay, for Bank BOS, it would be a small international presence, and it will be based on lending base.
Yes.
So they would have to find ways to create additional revenues and cash flows, revenue streams.
Yes.
Okay, they also talked about the major branch disruptions with regards to Bank BOS. Their intent would be to dispose of some of the branches. That's how they plan to cut down on, or to create additional cash flow by disposal of branches and downsizing. And definitely they talked about the fact of the IT platform that Bank BOS uses.
Mm-hmm. So what about the IT platform? Do you think that's significant?
It is.
Extremely, yes. And they're telling us they have the scalability for both organizations coming together. Now, did you see further on in the documents where that was confirmed?
Yes, by PricewaterhouseCoopers and additionally by IBM.
Excellent. So I take it the lady who's speaking, you've obviously read this right through. So can you give us that page number, and we could just head for that?
Sure.
Because this is a very important point.
That is page, no, it's further. I think that's page 18, page 18, where they deal with technology.
Yeah, there we go. Page 18. Towards the bottom of page 18, technology. Bank A has explained the benefits of converting to a single stable existing technology platform, and has the option of converting to its own existing IT platform. Bank B has drawn attention to execution risk and technology integrations. But PricewaterhouseCoopers, as you say, PwC, have reviewed Bank A's proposed approach to IT integration and confirmed Bank A's view that the approach is both logical and realistic. And IBM has confirmed that Bank A's existing IT platform is scalable. So that's very, very important indeed, because you'll know from your own experiences in the Caribbean, banks coming together, if the platform isn't sufficiently stable and scalable, it's going to be an absolute disaster, from the customer experience perspective. Then on the next page, continues.
When they talk about, I think the biggest thing coming out of, they talked about the system that is proposed by BOS, that fact that
Yes.
it is a Bank West system and it's untested in the
Yeah,
UK.
yeah. And very good, you've read this really well, you've highlighted a lot of things, it's great. And it's untested on the scale required, so you need to underline that, that's very risky. And Bank A believes that this mix and match approach to technology integration is high risk. It is, it's not been tested in the UK, and it hasn't been tested on the scale that's required. So that's a very important point there on technology, which Miguel will be very familiar with.
I think here too, it also says that Bank A has actually acquired a part of Bank B's business before.
Yes.
So that was a successful integration where they talked about the Tesco Club Card.
Tested
Yeah, so Bank A bought that from Bank B. So
Yeah,
they have
and
already had
successfully
that.
integrated that. So
Correct.
Bank A has considerable experience in successful technology conversions, having integrated Williams and Glyn's, which is probably a bank that you've never heard of, but a very old British bank again, quite a small bank, and numerous other banks. Yeah, very good on that. So what else have you spotted? Anyone else? We only have two people speaking so far. Anyone else? Anything that you spotted? Because there's plenty of risks, when two banks get together, or when one bank acquires another one.
Yeah, I think they mentioned, Bank A mentioned that they would allow the culture to be dictated by competition.
Excellent. Now, I was hoping someone would come onto this, because in organizations getting together, there's not just a technology risk position, and there's not just this concept of trying to gain, more revenues by putting the businesses together, but then there's the people, yeah? The people will be absolutely key as to whether this works out or not. So the things we've been discussing, very important, but the people issue, the staff, the management, will be extremely important. So it's a great point. So can you just direct us to the correct pages, please?
That's on page 8,
Thank you.
second paragraph.
Okay, let's head to page 8, everybody.
Second and third.
Are you sure it's page 8?
Yes.
Oh, yes, is it shareholders, customers, and staff?
No, second paragraph, last line.
Second paragraph.
Can you shout it out to me?
Second
Yeah.
paragraph up top.
The success of the AV bank will depend on anyone's strategy. We'll have a range of options, value created by active exploration of these options. Bank AB will not be monolithic, which means it just won't be slow in change.
Right.
Okay, it will encourage its business to have cultures appropriate to their customers' requirements as their competitive environments. So they intend to be flexible based on the customer's needs.
Yes. Okay, yes.
They go on to say Bank A will allow its business to compete freely and recognizes that the leads to the degree of internal competition. The policy has contributed to Bank A's success over the recent years. Bank AB will follow this approach because it's already been proven. They just feel that it will benefit Bank AB's proposition.
You probably didn't hear none of that. Sorry.
He's on a roll.
No. Could you gotta repeat that? You gotta-
Okay, I think,
Yeah, before, I'm gonna ask her to repeat. If she gonna repeat what she said.
You got there, we talked about the flexibility of them and going by the needs of their customers, right? So it goes on to say that Bank A allows its business to compete freely and recognizes that the bank leads to a degree of internal competition. The policy has
Yes.
contributed to Bank A's success over recent years. Bank AB will follow the approach because they've already tried and proven it, that by competing freely benefited the bank, they would use the same approach
same strategy,
with Bank AB.
Excellent, thank you. So what about, that's to do with customers and generating business, but what about the people? What about the staff?
Yeah, they're just gonna keep some of the
But they say the positions are voting.
Bank AB's plan is to have minimal disruption. I think
Yes.
that's an important point, because when you have things like disruption, it speaks to the impact on revenue or even just regular business. On page 17, it talks about, in AB's vision, no branch closures are planned as a result of the transaction.
Okay, let's just find the page. What page was it?
17,
17, thank you.
up top, it's like the second bullet point.
Yeah,
When you have mergers like these, obviously staff, the first thing they worry about is whether they will have a job the next day.
exactly, definitely. And they're really worried in case their branch should be closed, aren't they?
Back on page 82, it also spoke to Bank A having a high level of staff morale.
Yeah.
Right.
So they spoke to that and they talked about the 1999 survey that was done by the International Survey Research, where
Yes.
they performed better than the UK financial services norm in every one of 15 categories. So they
Yes.
talk about staff morale, so which means they would factor that in there.
They also talk
Yes,
about.
so the fact that they're not going to close any branches and the fact that they have the staff morale survey before, do they mention anywhere about having this type of survey after the merger, if it's successful, after the acquisition rather?
Yes,
They said in page
yeah. Last paragraph,
Which page are we on now?
Page 9.
Page 9, let's have a look. So page 9,
the last paragraph on page 9. where it
yeah, the
says
last, yeah.
that Bank AB will engage.
Oh, yeah, there we go, yeah. Well, that's interesting. So Bank AB will seek to offer a rewarding and stimulating environment for its staff, commit to communication with its staff, and training and development. There's an interesting point. Look, management positions in Bank AB will be offered to the best people,
Right,
Yes.
whether they're from Bank A or from Bank B.
Right.
And then Bank AB will engage the International Survey Research, share the results of this survey with its staff. So that's really good, isn't it? We're going to do that. Okay, anyone else? Because we're starting to spot like a lot of important things now. So we've talked a bit about the strategy side, we've talked about the IT platform, we've talked about improving the business, talked about some effects on the customer, and then also talked about the people. Anything else?
I want to raise the question of the business model of the bank.
Right.
Is it something that's common in the UK for banks to involve services inclusive of motor insurance,
Right, tell me which page you're referring to, please.
Page 5. The strength of AB, they listed what's the anticipated strength, and a portion of that is first in private motor insurance.
Yeah, where are you now? Which page are you on now?
5.
Page 5.
Page 5, right?
The bullet
Let's go back.
points under strength.
Okay, just give me a second, because it's a bit slower to change on the screen than it is for you clicking through the paper. Okay, strength. Bank AB, is this the part you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
First in corporate banking, second retail, first private, first offshore, first in private motor insurance. To answer your question, very unusual. Unusual. Yeah, yeah. So it's quite a spread of business. As you can see, they've got partnerships with Tesco, the big food retailing group. Virgin, you'll know, as Virgin Atlantic Airlines, but also Virgin as a small financial services business in the UK. Shell, or the oil company, and Scottish Power in the power as well. So they have quite a diverse holding of businesses, don't they?
Yeah.
So that's why they're heading it up, strength, diversity, and flexibility. So these qualities will help Bank AB to achieve growth, reduce risk, and adapt to rapidly changing environments. So it's quite a powerful document, I think you'll agree.
Yeah, I think one thing that was difficult to read without seeing was the vision that Bank B has for itself. So, do they see themselves as this large, diversified organization that Bank A is proposing they become? Or do they see themselves as a small, flexible, niche bank and disposing of anything that's not core? And then Bank A came with this plan to be a retail bank in this area, but a corporate bank in this one. So it seemed like not having that clear, defined vision of what Bank B is or sees itself as makes it difficult to assess these different proposals, because they have to be aligned with what Bank B's vision is, I feel.
Very good, that's excellent. So this is a document with considerable detail, but the point is, what's Bank B's view of all this is a suggestion coming forward. So you have to remember, as we looked early on page 4, who's written page 4? And who's signing page 4? Chairman, yeah, but it's not the chairman of Bank B, and it's not the chairman of Bank AB, it's the chairman of Bank A. So Bank A has proven its ability to manage growth, manage costs, managing changing distribution, customer preferences, all with an innovative spirit. It is this spirit infused into Bank B that will lead to its revitalization. At a time of rapid change in the industry, which model would you prefer? This document compares 3 proposals and explains why we believe that Bank AB offers the best vision, best benefits, and lowest risk by a substantial margin. I strongly encourage you to accept our increased offer. So this is a very bullish document intending to persuade Bank B, that the best to jump into bed with Bank A, correct?
Yeah. My concern is the only concern about shareholders' value increasing.
Yeah. So the thing is, if you knew a bit more about Bank B, you would learn that actually Bank B is much, much larger than Bank A. Bank A, you probably picked that up, the lady saying yes. She's the lady, I think, who's read everything in quite a lot of detail. If we look at it's one of the pages, if you find it, 13, thank you. Yeah, so here's page 13, very interesting comparative chart. Look at Bank A, look, 310 branches. And look at Bank B, 1,720 branches. So you can see this Bank A is quite, I'm trying to think of the right word, audacious, no, or, yeah, you know what I mean? They're really going for it, yeah, because Bank B is huge. Now, Bank B, because I changed the names, but Bank B at this time was the largest bank in the UK. So here you've got a small bank making a bid for a very large bank, and how could they try to do that? Well, the reason being that Bank B's not been adding shareholder value, they're not paying much of a dividend, and it's perceived as a very large, mature business that's in slight decline, yeah?
Correct.
So there's not a lot of new ideas, there's not a lot of spark, the shareholders, there's quite a bit of shareholder unease. So Bank A are very entrepreneurial. They've spotted this, and they put together this very powerful document. But as you correctly point out, and I was hoping somebody would do that, you know, what's Bank B's side of the story? You know, Bank A are commenting on what they believe Bank B's story is. And then what about Boss? Do you think Boss have got any chance? How many branches have they got? In England, only 20.
Yeah, but there are aspects of the business that they don't even understand because they're not in.
So it's tiny. Look, infrastructure limited, retail banking, yes. Corporate banking, yes. Offshore banking, small. Private banking, no. Complex treasury, no. Value at risk treasury systems, no. Substantial commercial wholesale payment volumes, no. So they look parked right out of the business, don't you think? Because you're talking about business models now, but you can see the difficulty that Boss would have, you know, in matching with B, because there's very limited cross-matching of those sections. Whereas when you look at A and B, there is good business overlap in all of the activities, but the fact stands out quite sharply that Bank A is much, much smaller than Bank B. Okay, any other points? Building up on that comment the lady made.
Just one last thing.
Yep.
I didn't see the final, like, ownership percentages that we were talking about here in terms of the merger. So, if Bank A and Bank B merges, I would have wanted to see what percentage ownership is Bank A wanting to take in exchange for their increased revenue or whatever they're proposing here.
Yeah, okay, well, it doesn't quite work like that with an acquisition, yes? So the acquisition will be based on the offer to the shareholders, you know, based on this page 4, which, but you don't have the mathematical details of that. So generally an acquisition will be financed on a hybrid nature. Generally it'll be, you know, some cash and it'll be some share swapping arrangements, etc. But we don't have all the detail of that. So, but that's a very good point. So it won't be like a mixed ownership. You know, what will happen is it will become Bank A, B as a group. It's a good point. Any other points on this? So what's your feeling on it? I mean, do you think this should go ahead or not?
No.
Just based on what's been presented, it appears strong. I would support it.
Okay, Miguel, I have to ask you just to pass the mic again to somebody who's got an opinion on it.
I was saying no, and I was saying yes.
We're working here today, Miguel. It's your
Yeah.
daily exercise.
I'm kind of stuck because I think managing 310 branches is quite different from managing 1,720. And a lot of times you can have big gains in a smaller company, you're able to move in a more flexible way.
Yeah,
Than
definitely.
when you take on, if you add these two, you have 2,000 branches, that's a very
Yeah.
different conversation.
Yeah, very
So,
good.
so being very confident of yourself, but only having 310 branches to manage is
Yes.
very different from managing 2,000.
Totally agree, totally agree. So they're talking about the IT platform being scalable for the transactions. That's fine, but your point's very, very important in that do management have the ability to put together and manage an organization with over 2,000 branches, when they've been used to managing on a much smaller scale where it's much easier, isn't it? To be innovative and to grow. It's easy to grow from a small base.
Yeah.
When you've got a huge organization, to get growth organically is very hard indeed, which is why you see a lot of mergers and acquisitions are from very big companies, where the organic growth has started to slow down. So how can they grow? Well, quite often the only route to growth is by acquisition.
Yeah.
Or by merger. Good example of that in the US just recently is Dow Chemicals, the huge chemical company in the US merging with DuPont Chemicals. They're number 2 and 3 in chemical companies in the US. So why would they merge? Well, the only reason they're going to merge, is the cost savings of these two large organizations coming together, and then business synergies, to make two big companies even bigger. So it's an interesting example. So you're getting really good on this, I think, now. So they're promising, the best people will get the best jobs, but do the best people getting these best jobs have the ability to manage this huger organization than was seen before? There's a big question mark, isn't it? So that's a huge, what would we call that? Is it a management risk, or is it a strategic risk, or is it a business risk? What do you think? Yeah, it's a type of operational risk, isn't it? Which, you get a lot of exposure with Sam on module 2, where he talks about operational risk. So this will be a big operational risk issue. How can these people manage this organization where the number of branches are going to end up over 2,000 when they've been used to managing a much smaller organization? I mean, who's going to visit the branches? That's going to be a massive job, isn't it? You're going to have to go around all the branches explaining what's happening. Well, that would be a good way of doing it, to have some face-to-face discussions, because people will be worried, as you say. Okay, so any more views? Anyone feel, sort of quite strongly that this definitely should go through? Because we're getting some negative vibes at the moment.
I feel it is possible for them to, in every acquisition there are risks, okay? And so when we talk about in terms of the management risk, I'm sure this is something that they would have taken into consideration. They would have put in mitigants in terms of, okay, how do we avoid? They've given us a well laid out plan. Yes, they are small banks, but when you're looking to grow, you would take that into consideration. The people you need to grow, the various, the different aspects of the business you need to put in place, okay?
Yep.
Mind you, Bank B is an existing bank. They're not talking about getting rid of the management that is already there. They're just now
Correct.
talking about combining the two. So you are
Yep.
now looking at a combined management force. So whereas they're now coming under one umbrella and they will be a shared vision, okay, it's just that the vision is changing, but the management still remains the same. So they still go through with the actual management of the business. Now, what
Yeah.
Bank A is proposing for Bank AB, and I guess this is something that they still see, is a new sales culture, the process in terms of which they intend to grow the business. So they're acquiring additional branches that would allow them to push their products and their
Right.
new sales and their sales process forward. So I guess that is one way that they see they will be growing.
Yes, so you sound very positive about the benefits of a acquiring B. Is that correct?
I guess I would support it. I could support this based on the information that's been presented alone.
The third bullet point on that page 4, Bank A has a detailed implementation plan to deliver this value. Plan is low risk, envisages minimal disruption to customers, converts to single stable existing platform. And then the next point, Bank A has a strong management team with experience in transforming and merging banking operations. So they're going to tell us in the due further on.
Yes, that's not section. I know this is every 20 minutes. One more time.
Okay. Tuesday evening, right at the interview?
Okay, we got you back.
You're trying to come back?
Yeah, we got you back, thanks.
That's the trouble with that building, Miguel, the signal's poor.
Yeah.
Can you see that? Can you see my screen again?
Yeah, we were good. We're back up. Oh, you mean you can share screen?
No.
Yeah, can you see the document on the screen?
No,
No,
not
not
yet.
as yet.
No? All right, I'll try it again then. It should come on a second.
All right, it's up.
Is it?
Okay.
Okay, so that's what we're discussing in bank, the third bullet point and the fourth one about the strong management team and then excellent record delivering benefits. But it comes back again and again to whether they have the ability to take on, this very, very large bank, which is probably 3 times the size of their own bank. Anyway, let me cut a long story short. So this is based, on an actual case, and what happened in reality is Bank B's shareholders did agree to Bank A's offer, so the two banks did get together. Now, what you'll be wanting to know, I'm sure, is did it work out?
Yeah.
Did it work out? Well, yes, it did work out. So the two together, generated larger amounts of profitability. There was cost savings as promised, not quite to the extent of the figures that you saw in the report there, but there were cost savings, and the businesses came together successfully. And the chief executive who oversaw this, he personally visited every branch.
Wow.
He went around every branch and talked to the staff, explaining to them, what their plans were, etc., etc. But unfortunately, a couple of years later, they did start to close branches. And this did start to make, some stuff redundant, which was against the promises that they had made. The chief executive, because this was the largest acquisition we'd seen in the history of financial services, he was knighted by the Queen, and some of you will have heard his name, Sir Fred Goodwin. Anyone heard of Fred Goodwin? Well, if you have or you haven't, sometime you want to just do a Google search on Fred Goodwin, or is Fred Goodwin in those press releases, Miguel?
I don't think so.
You don't?
No.
Anyone got the risk management press releases handy? Press clippings, yeah. You know, it's the one where we had the governor of the Swiss Central Bank in.
Yeah, page 9.
Yeah.
Is RBS in there, Fred Goodwin?
Page 9.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I can't get that on the screen at the moment, but you'll see Fred Goodwin, he becomes like public enemy number one. So he went like from being a hero to he was a hero masterminding this. So what on earth could go wrong? Anyone find the clippings?
Yes,
Yes.
page 8, yes.
Someone with the mic near to them, tell us the highlights of what happened. Because I can't get that on the screen at the moment, so you'll have to make a summary of it yourselves. Miguel, can you do your mic thing to somebody who can give us a pointer?
Yeah, there's no research going through right now.
So what does it say about Fred Goodwin, folks?
He attempted to conceal an affair.
He was-
That's the very first thing.
Yeah.
Miguel, pass the microphone to the lady who is speaking, please.
Yeah, they didn't know this.
He almost caused the collapse of the Royal Bank of Scotland, hasn't
I
he?
can't hear you. I can't hear you.
It talks about the public angle over his role
Yes.
in the Royal Bank of Scotland near collapse in 2008, and his attempt
Yep.
to conceal an affair with a colleague. You
Yep.
using a super injunction. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
His matter was
yeah.
taken.
Yeah. So fast forwarding, then. So what you've got there, you know, is Bank A trying to acquire Bank B, which they did. Fred Goodwin was chief executive, so he masterminded everything. Very entrepreneurial. The two got together. Then, well, I'm not meaning with his colleague. I mean the two banks. The two banks got together. It was very successful for a while, and then another bank came up for possible acquisition, which was a Dutch bank, which you might have heard of, ABN AMRO, the famous Dutch bank. And Fred was advised by his colleague that the acquisition would be a good idea. Now, by this stage, you know, he'd obviously been knighted by the Queen. He's feeling very confident about acquisitions. So what happens when you get very confident about something? Yeah, you might get caught out. So what happens is, in any acquisition, you need to do due diligence, don't you?
Yes.
Particularly if you're going to buy another financial institution, you know, there's a lot of risks to look at. But proper due diligence was not done because Fred felt so confident about the Dutch bank, you know, being a good acquisition. And also, are you recording this, Miguel?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, I can't say what I was going to say because I've got a habit of putting these on YouTube, so I can't go any further than that, to do with Fred's colleague, okay? So there's an underlying aspect there. And to cut a long story short, the bank had a lot of credit risk problems within the acquired bank. And these problems came to the merged Bank AB, the RBS bank, just at the wrong time, because you remember 2007, 2008 was the time of the global crisis where liquidity markets froze. And of course, because of the acquisition, he used a lot of the bank's liquidity to acquire the Dutch bank. So basically, he was short of cash flow at the wrong time. So the cash flows turned quite negative, and he couldn't access cash flows within the marketplace. The shareholders were quite nervous at this time. The money markets were quite nervous. So he became, as you can see in that article, a very, well, at the time he was said to be the most unpopular banker in the UK. So from being a hero in the UK, he became very unpopular. So what of the bank? Well, the bank had to have a bailout, by the government.
20 billion.
Yeah.
So we're
That
still
was a condition on
shareholders
them leaving the bank.
in this bank, the public, and some parts of it have been sold, but it's still struggling, to return to its former glory. So I hope you found that case study quite interesting. So when you're looking at these documents from a risk perspective, don't be overwhelmed by the detail. Go back to your main thoughts, like, what's the IT position going to be? What's the position for the customers? What's the position for the staff? Very important. And then very importantly, what's the competencies of the people who are going to be running this, this joint organization? Yes, we can use some of the people who are skilled, who are there from before, but it's going to take an extra level of skill to manage this huge organization. You could see the size of it coming through. Okay, let's just stop that case study there, and I'll just come back to one or two more of the slides. So if you move forward in the slides, to slide 55, where we talk about types of risk. Thank you. Someone said page 56. Okay. Now then, there you are. You can see Miguel walking the tightrope. Yeah. That's probably between the building you're in now and the building that you should be in.
Yeah.
Is he going to fall or is he going to make it?
For a long time.
Now, the reason he might fall is on that slide, there's a major risk that's not stated there. Anybody spot that? On the slide, there's a major risk that is not quoted on the slide, which will be missing. But where's the credit risk? You need to add on the credit risk. And I'd suggest to you that within the Caribbean, maybe not quite so much in Bahamas because you have a lot of offshore business, but within the Caribbean region and globally, credit risk is number one. Your credit risk is the major profit maker in most commercial banks, and it's also the major loss maker in most commercial banks. You have to get it wrong. So you need to add credit risk to that slide. So credit risk, market risk, not so much within the Caribbean. Operational risk, very important. Liquidity risk, very, very important. And if you write against that liquidity risk, strengthened under Basel III, the Basel III talks about, improving liquidity management. Legal risk, well, we all suffer from that. You guys, with your proximity to the US, there'll be more legal aspects coming your way, than we get. But at the moment, of course, we're in a terrible legal risk position with Brexit. We should be leaving the European Union later this month, and we still haven't got it agreed. So these politicians have been terrible. They've been. Sorry, I can't say too much. I forget I keep putting it on YouTube. Yeah, they've been working on this for years and years. So it's a difficult situation that we're in. So it's probably the most complex divorce that you'll ever see. And those people who have been through a divorce, I know someone that has, it's extremely difficult. So trying to get our way out of Brexit's very tough. Legal risk, reputational risk, we discussed that again today, and then there'll be a whole batch of other risks that we're looking at. So within our risk management documents and our documentation, we're going to need this building up of information, which will continue throughout your program, your other 5 modules. In particular, the operational risk module, where we'll talk about written policies and guidelines. You've got to have some type of independence within the risk function, otherwise it becomes not a truly effective risk function. So it really needs to be independent of the business unit, so it can make a clear risk definition and risk focus. We need well-established controls over inputs of data in whatever risk models we're using. And we need this knowledgeable senior management oversight, which was questioned quite rightly by you on the Bank AB documentation, and also, featured in that HPOS, Halifax and Bank of Scotland coming together, which was another bailout from the British government, and then legal aspects, the legal reviews coming in there. Continuing, can we have stress tests on these different functions? And again, this is very predominant in the Basel III. You could write against that again, Basel III. What about these complex instruments? Well, you don't have too many of those within NASA and within the Caribbean. VAR stands for Value at Risk, which you'll look at in the Market Risk module. Simulations of risk, very good if you can achieve these type of models, and again, that's mainly market risk. Risk-adjusted returns we talked about, like RAROC, R-A-R-O-C, or RORAC, R-O-R-A-C, that's the risk-adjusted return on capital. And then the concept of event databases or risk registers. Now I'm going to just switch into something just temporarily to show you. Now, I don't think you've got a copy of this yet, but you will be getting a copy. Can you see this on the screen in the 3 dimensions of operational risk? I'll try and make it a bit bigger. There we are, it's come up a bit bigger there. Look, is that bigger on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll see the categorization now. This isn't something that we've put together. This is something straight from the Basel website, the Basel Committee website, where they talk about causes of risk, such as failed internal processes, people, systems, external events, and then there's a whole list of loss events there, categorized into these different sections, and then what are the consequences, such as legal liability, compliance, loss or damage to assets, write-downs, reputation, business interruption. And then the second slide, which takes it just one step further, which looks on the left-hand side at the contributory factors. Now, if you think back to the Barings Bank case that we looked at, you remember on Barings Bank when Nick Gleeson was doing front and back office duties? So you can see straight away inadequate segregation of duties, is a contributory factor to these loss events. Insufficient training, lack of management supervision, again you could think of the Barings case. Inadequate auditing, yes, because it was just a part-time controller being put in. Poor systems, yes, he's in charge of front and back office, and poor HR policies. So this is how you would build up those people in the room who don't have a risk register. You can take this type of information, from the Buckle Committee, and help to populate your risk register. All right, let me get out of that. So this is where we're up to the event databases. Now, in risk management, people say, oh, if only we'd spotted this thing earlier. Well, quite often there will be some early warning signs that we might pick up in terms of risk. Look at number one, unusual profitability, especially relative to the perceived level of risk. And that's very important from the investment standpoint. And we discussed briefly the Madoff case in New York, and we discussed briefly Stanford position in Antigua, where very strong profits or returns are being made relative to where we were being told it's low risk. So we always have to remember, what's the risk level relative to the returns that's coming through. Unusual cash flow or settlement activity. Again, the Barings Bank case, remember there were over 50,000 contracts going through this suspense account. Early warning signals could be questions from internal audit and possibly external sources. And then the one that we all hear of, but it's difficult whether we should take action on or not, and that's rumours. Yeah? Well, it's rumoured about so-and-so, so-and-so. So just a few final slides. So if we're trying to
Waste time.
What a shame, we'd almost made it.
Yeah, we're back.
We're back on.
Yeah.
Is the screen back on or not?
The screen is back on.
Okay, now I'm getting a message through my end that you have a poor connection speed,
Yeah.
and it's recommending I switch to audio only.
But that's okay. We'll be good.
We're okay. So here's some principles set out. Again, an extract from the Basel Committee documentation. So principle one, now you're going to need to highlight some of this because again, it's potential exam questions. Who is primarily responsible? Board of Directors. Look, principle one, director board responsibility. Principle two, subject to an effective, comprehensive and independent internal audit check. So whatever you're coming up with must be checked out by internal audit. Principle three, senior management is responsible for the management framework, which must be approved by the board of directors. It should be constant. And there's the problem for staff. Look, all levels of staff should understand their responsibilities. I think that's very, very important. So it's not just a highlight, that's hidden away somewhere. The staff need to be aware of the problem, need to identify and assess operational risk in material products, activities, processes and systems, and the assessment of new products, which we discussed before. Principle 5, we must have a process in place for monitoring of this and regular reporting to senior management and the board of directors. These should be periodically reviewed, as we've discussed before. And then 7 is what I was talking about earlier. Where's your contingency plans, and where's your business continuity plan? And where is the backup, where is the business continuity plan, and what's the action plan in case we suffer something that's a bit of a disaster. Principle 8, all institutions, regardless of size, should have an effective operational risk framework. Now this is the role of supervisors. So this is the people from the central bank that we're looking at here. And you'll see a bit later in the information pack, I'll check with Miguel in a second whether he printed all these, but there's a whole wad of slides that's applicable for the supervisors. Excuse me. Principle 9, regular independent evaluation. And 10 goes back to the board of directors again. We talked about this before. So if you want to write on that slide, board of directors responsibility for public disclosure on what's happening in terms of risk management. So in conclusion, here's our risk action plan. It needs board sponsorship to get it going. We need a commitment of resources. That's going to be hard to achieve because it will require capital spend. And as we know at the moment, getting any type of budget through is really difficult indeed. We're going to need this lost database. If you write against that risk register, that's what I've been talking about. We need conceptually sound enterprise risk management systems, and we need roles and responsibilities clearly defined. So slides on board sponsorship there, committing resources, and some closing thoughts. ERM is not a guarantee against disaster. ERM emphasizes good risk management, internal controls and transparency. It's part of the corporate governance agenda designed to boost investor confidence. So it should improve efficiency. It should give us controls that are better matched to the risks that we're facing. It should help us reduce error rates, give greater assurance, competitive advantage, and we hope improved shareholder value. Okay, now the question, Miguel. Final question of the day. Do they have the supplementary Pillar 2 guidance notes or not?
Yes.
Yes.
You do? Okay,
I wasn't sure.
Okay, now Miguel.
Yeah, they do have it.
Yeah, okay, so here's final question for Miguel. Do you know if currently the exam looks to these Pillar 2 notes, or are they strictly supplementary?
Yeah, they do, because Scotland has its entire presentation. So yeah, they probably will ask questions from this.
Yeah, oh, that's a
I'm
shame.
sure, yeah, it's been forwarded to them.
That's a shame, that's another 50 slides. Can you cross-check with them and let these people know?
Yeah, I'll double check.
Yeah, Miguel will follow this up, look, with the,
Of course, it's open book, so.
the lady who does the,
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
At least you have it there when you.
Wait.
Speak to them, please.
yes. Well, I'll leave
It's
you,
open line, that's line.
okay, look everybody, I'll leave you to please make sure Miguel does what he just said there, because it's very important to you, because there's 50 more slides that you could be studying, not necessarily, right? Because when I wrote Module 1, this section here was intended just as supplementary guidance for the people who work in the central banks. So we need to cross-check this with the exam people. Okay, I'm sure Miguel will do that. So good luck with the rest of the program.
Thank you.
It's a very challenging program, but I'm sure by the time you get to the end of it, you'll have learned a lot more about risk management. And it is a good international qualification to get. And I'm sure Miguel's already told you that those of you who wanted to continue your studies a bit later, for example, with the Chartered Banker MBA, you will get exemption from the financial institution risk management module. You'll get total exemption from that if you're going to study for the MBA, because this module, the risk manager, gets you exemption from the MBA risk management module. Okay, anything extra to add, Miguel?
No, thanks, and thank you once again for the job well done. Now I'll brief the folks on classes going forward.
Okay, thanks. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again. Saturday morning. Thank you. Bye for now.
Folks, please make sure you carry your module 2 with you.
So this is in here?
That's part of it. No, let me get, that one's incomplete.
Okay.
I was missing the document.
Thank you.
Make sure you carry your module 2 with you. We are back to the institute. Oh, no. For Tuesdays going forward. All right.
Starting this Tuesday.
Starting this Tuesday. Okay? What else? So I'll see you on Tuesday. Next week, no. Back to the institute. No. Tuesday coming class. 12.